Donald Trump's in a panic, screaming about how there's no collusion and we should be investigating Hillary Clinton and Jimmy Carter and Grover Cleveland. We're of course now worried about what the next steps he might take are. Preet Bharara was the person in charge of the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York. Very important position. He was one of the people that was let go by Donald Trump, potentially because Preet Bharara was investigating parts of the Trump team. Now, at that time, I wouldn't say that was grounds to get ready for investigating Trump, because he did have a right to get rid of Bharara, and normally you do replace those US attorneys. He did it with very questionable timing, but okay, no problem. So Bharara goes on television now and explains how investigations like this might unfold, what are the things Trump might do, and what are the consequences of that. So let's watch.
So we know from history in recent months that the President of the United States has strong reactions to public events. If the President of the United States is sending some kind of message to the potential defendant or other witnesses, and that's in two categories. One, is he sending a message of intimidation in some way through himself or his cohorts, suggesting that people should not be talking and people should keep their mouths shut, which happens in life from time to time. And the second thing is whether or not he sends a message of reassurance.
So that would be obstruction of justice. And it wouldn't make the case any better for Donald Trump. It would arguably make it worse. Because if he's trying to intimidate witnesses in public through Twitter or any other statements that he makes, that is potentially a disastrous idea and could lead to obstruction of justice charges. Now, if Preet Bharara had a grudge against Trump, he certainly shouldn't be publicizing this on television. But it doesn't really matter because Trump can't help himself. He's a petulant child. So he'd be like, oh yeah, I'll do the obstruction anyway. And plus, he's in such a panic, and he knows what the rest of us don't know, which is how deep his ties to the Russians actually go. So he might have to do these things that land him in trouble for obstruction of justice anyway, because the justice is what he's worried about. Okay, another point here made by Bharara on what could happen next.
We also have from the historical record in recent months that Donald Trump will avoid going through the regular process for pardoning someone who's an ally. In this case, it was Joe Arpaio, the sheriff in Arizona. And there has been much speculation about whether or not Donald Trump would hesitate to use his pardon power to get out of legal jeopardy and trouble any allies of his. And that's something I would watch very, very closely here.
See, that right there would be the most unacceptable. And because if you allow a president to pardon anyone who is part of wrongdoing connected to himself, that means we don't have a democracy anymore. And we don't have a president, we have a king. And we're gonna let him get away with any crime. So that is exactly when Congress should, in a bipartisan manner, pursue impeachment. No ands, ifs, or buts. In fact, we had a petition on this a while back, and time to double up on this in a big, big way. It's tytnetwork.com/pardon. And we're saying if Donald Trump pardons anyone from his campaign or administration involved in a Russian investigation, he should be impeached immediately. Because if you let him get away with that, it's all over. That means he can pardon everyone who's guilty and just not step down. There's no end to that, and then we are no longer in a democracy. So Bharara is absolutely right to sound the alarm about that. It would be obstruction of justice. It would get him in more legal trouble, but then he would just pardon himself. So the minute he pardons anyone, if he does that in tied to this investigation, it should be obvious, immediate impeachment, and we should all be in the streets. I mean, sign the petition now, but if that happens, we cannot let that stand. That would be deeply un-American and would ruin our form of government. One more here from Bharara.
This argument that Mueller should resign, we're hearing more and more from the president's allies on Capitol Hill, from their obedient vassals in the media. What's your take on it?
Well, it's what a coincidence, right, Jake, that as Bob Mueller is getting his job done, and as he's getting closer to doing something that's real and filing charges, that political allies of the president are calling for his resignation.
Of course they are. And that's part of the reason why they brought up this Uranium One stuff from years and years ago, because they want to be able to say, oh, Mueller was in the administration when that was happening. He's got a conflict of interest, which is something Trump tweeted. Trump is basically manufacturing on Twitter publicly his defense, and then the Sean Hannitys and Fox and Friends and all those guys and a lot of the Republican congressmen are going out there dutifully going, okay, here's how we're going to obstruct justice. The guy investigating the president who is now found wrongdoing, 12-count indictment against Manafort and Gates, and you've got Papadopoulos that has already pled guilty and turned evidence. It doesn't matter. We're going to try to get rid of the guy doing the investigation, Robert Mueller. If that's not a sign that he's guilty, then you're not paying attention or you don't want to see it. I don't know why you don't want to see it. Maybe because you're a Trump supporter and don't care, or you've just lost your mind. But it is clear that they're in the middle of publicly trying to obstruct justice. There's usually a very good reason for that. It's usually because they're afraid of what they'll get if there actually is justice. Help us build independent media together. TYTnetwork.com/join.